podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.
Hey guys, welcome to another week here on Ring Around The Rosie. I'm your hostess, Kim Brown, aka Platinum Rose Lady, coming to you on June 6th, which is a Wednesday, 2018. I hope everybody's week is going pretty well. My week's been going okay. It's June here in Massachusetts, and that's obviously a time when things are supposed to be warm and sunny, and today was in the 50s. And climate change? What climate change? Fuck that shit. I don't know. It's really kind of strange. The weather's really weird. Just, one day it's really hot, the next day it's really cold, or it's rainy, or whatever. And everyone's bitching about it except me. At least when the weather's like cool like this, I'm like, I'm loving this. And, I'm a fall winter person. I am not a spring summer person. I don't like to sweat. And I just, it's summer in New England can be humid and disgusting. So anytime when the weather's cool, I'm totally fine with that. I do have to say this thing that's really kind of weird right now, and it only seems to be happening around this, the place where I live. There's some kind of plant around here that's obviously just come into, fruition, or however you word it with plants, because I totally slept through like anything to do with science class. There are these little white, they're not dandelion puffs, because we don't have dandelions around here, but they look like dandelion puffs. And they're everywhere. They're covering the sidewalks. They're all over the grass. They're all over the bushes around the buildings. They're all over the carpets. You can't help but track them in. They get all over your clothes. It's like, okay, I don't know what this stuff is, but I really want it to get off of me. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like the most clingy, static cling stuff ever. It's just weird. I don't even know what kind of plant it is, but, so that's just a little bit of side stuff there. I'm sorry. I don't know where I went off on that. This week I wanted to talk about, something that I was kind of like, okay, I need to come up with a topic this week. And I was like, hey, that's a good topic. When wrestling crosses the line. Now, obviously, when you have professional wrestling, it's considered by a lot of people to be lowbrow entertainment anyway. These people are called snobs. I mean, it's just a play with, a little more violence and stuff, and TNA and stuff like that every once in a while. But, it's a play, it's a soap opera, that kind of a thing, whether people want to admit it or not. And that's not to say that the people who do it aren't great athletes, because they are. That's not to say people don't get hurt, because they do. And I have complete respect for the people that do this as a profession. That having been said, for people who compare wrestling to a soap opera, I do agree with that, because it does have storylines. Now, the problem that some people won't admit to is that comparing wrestling to a soap opera is true in another aspect, because there have been times on soap operas where you, as the audience, have been asked to swallow some really ridiculous stuff. And that's the nature of a soap opera. It's melodramatic, It's supposed to have these moments where you're like, oh, gasp, shock of shock, so-and-so's husband, who we thought was dead when his plane crashed in Peru, is alive, and, or somebody has an evil twin or an illegitimate child or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And for the most part, some of them are ridiculous twists. Some of them are shocking in a good way, and some of them are just silly. The problem is when a soap opera goes off and veers way off course and gets into downright goofy areas. And that's something that some fans like, but some fans don't. And the same thing with professional wrestling. Sometimes things get completely out there and ridiculous. And not in a good way, not in an, oh my gosh, I can't believe they pulled that off way. It's a, oh man, why did they go there way? Or was that even legal way, which has happened more than a few times. Obviously, crossing the line is going to vary from person to person. One thing that offends the hell out of one person might make another person just go, well, that was dumb. Case in point, something that I've actually never seen, which I know this sounds a little strange, but I've heard enough about it. For one thing, we didn't get ECW when this happened. The whole crucifixion angle that they perpetrated, for lack of a better word, between Sandman and Raven during their epic feud where, Sandman was literally put on a cross and had a crown of barbed wire put on his head. And the ECW crowd went completely nuts from everything I've ever heard about this. And they were forced to apologize. Raven was forced to come out and apologize in what I've heard referred to as was a pretty half-assed apology. Now, for some people, that kind of an angle is something that they might be like, okay, that was really, kind of dumb. And they would just move on. For other people, that would be a complete deal breaker. That would be something they would be like, I am never watching this, this place again. I'm never watching their product because that really offended me because I am a person of faith. That kind of a thing. I myself, me personally, have never watched it because I am a person of faith. And I'm definitely not a perfect person of faith, but I do look at something like that and I'm like, yeah, no, I really don't need to see that. So I don't watch it. If I know something's going to upset me, I don't watch it as opposed to watching it and getting all upset and getting all offended. I'm not saying that my way is a perfect way, but I do think it would cause people a whole lot less agita if they did that. But what do I know? I keep a rubber duck in my purse, so I'm not exactly the most stable person in the world either. The whole crossing the line thing can vary from person to person, like I said, and it can also vary from where it happens as to whether or not people feel like, oh my gosh, that went too far. When it comes to stuff in the ring, obviously if it's an accident, that's something that has, nobody has control over. If somebody, slips and accidentally kicks somebody for real really hard, or if somebody, hits someone with a chair and, busts them open or whatever, accidents happen, things happen, Murphy's Law, it's just the way that it is. When it's something that happens in the ring, though, and it's completely, this was a terrible idea from the beginning, and the whole thing that you actually thought this was going to work, I can think of one incident where that happened that I actually can say with, absolute certainty that it did not happen in the WWE. So I know some people are just like, oh wow, because this is not going to be a complete bashing on the WWE stuff for all the times that the line was crossed, although they're going to come up more than other places, to be perfectly honest with you. There was one of the shows that WCW put on. They might have still been the NWA at that time, I'm not sure, where there was a match between Terry Funk and Ric Flair, and it was a vicious match. It was vicious because it's Terry Funk, who is a really talented, amazing individual and someone that I would be honored to buy a drink for. But he also is very, very scary. And sometimes. And this was one of those times when he took a plastic bag and put it over Ric Flair's head and pulled it, from the look of it, quite tight. And it was just one of those moments where I remember watching this and being like, what? It was complete. I mean, the announcers were freaking out. The crowd was going mental, and people were just losing it because it was like, holy crap, this guy is trying to commit murder on national television. I mean, there's a reason that they put all over those things, don't leave around children and small animals and, blah, 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 because they can, suffocate you. And it was just, one of those moments where it was like, that was completely over the top, out of line, not in, it was just one of those moments where it was completely nuts, and not in a good way. It felt like, how you have moments where things are going on in wrestling and everyone's flying all over the place and stuff's getting thrown and there's chairs flying everywhere and people getting punched and kicked and everything like that. And it's insanity and madness and lunacy. And you're eating it up because you're a fan and you enjoy that. But there are moments when stuff slips and you feel like, oh shit, this just went sideways. And that was one of those moments when that bag went over Flair's head, and I don't know how they got him to agree to do that, because I'm sorry, there is no friggin' way I would have agreed to that at all, not even for a minute. It was just one of those, it was frightening. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. It was horrifying, and it was one of those moments where you just felt like shit went horribly sideways. And the fact that it happened in the ring, it was just, it wasn't a backstage vignette or anything like that. It wasn't something that, it wasn't something that was, cut away from. They lingered on it. The camera was on it for just like, because, it was shocking. It was obviously shocking TV, and it was meant to shock, and it was meant to provoke, and it was meant to scare the living piss out of the audience. And I gotta be perfectly honest with you, mission accomplished there, guys. It was completely frigging insane. Obviously, when it comes to things that went over the line, some people might be like, well, that's the entire run of ECW. They were always going over the line. They were always doing, crazy things, and there was all this blood and stuff. I mean, I personally don't think blood is over the line. I think that, I do think that now you kind of look back on, when people were getting busted open pretty much every week, and, people were just bleeding everywhere, and then, there's all the things that we know now about bloodborne diseases, and it's kind of like, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't have been doing this shit. It's like, wow. But to be perfectly honest, there were moments in ECW that I was definitely like, okay, that was nuts. The chair incident, which made it into ECW's, opening credits, that was complete. It's really funny because that was one of the first things I ever saw of ECW, was what is usually, now and forever will be referred to as the chair moment, when you had this match between Public Enemy and Terry Funk, there's that name again, and Cactus Jack, and they asked for chairs, and I'm sorry, it was one of those, oh, wow, why did you do that moments, especially why did you do that there? Because the arena, the ECW arena, having been lucky enough to have been there once, I can honestly say had its own aura, and their fans were devoted. They were devoted, they were passionate. I'm not entirely sure if calling them rabid is, I don't want that to be taken wrong, but I'm sitting there thinking, how do you say that where it's a positive? But anyway, if you were an ECW fan and you lived in Philly, you know who you are, and I mean ill will. I don't, because you guys were really passionate and crazy and fun to be around when we got to go to the arena, but you guys were nuts. Completely crazy. And they asked for chairs, and they got chairs. People were hurling chairs into the ring. You know, the wrestlers got literally buried under chairs, and you could hear them over the PA screaming, "Stop throwing chairs." And it was, I mean, I remember watching it, and I remember, I don't know what, no, I do know what this says about me, but I'm not, I remember kind of sitting there, and I was kind of laughing it was kind of, I don't know if it was disbelief or shock or just the complete absurdity of it all. I just started to laugh. And, I mean, just thinking about the whole thing just still makes me smile. And I know I am a deeply deranged individual and I should seek help. But it was just one of those moments that was so spontaneous, and the arena and ECW really had that effect on people, that they had moments that felt so spontaneous. And that was a moment that I wouldn't say that moment crossed a line. I would say it was bonkers. I mean, it was completely insane, and it's a miracle that nobody got killed and or hurt or severely concussed or whatever. And I'm not even talking about the wrestlers. I'm talking about the fans. I mean, if somebody had thrown a chair from behind and it didn't make it into the ring and it bonked somebody in the head, they could have gotten, severely injured. But I'm sure nobody was thinking about that last night because everybody was, wired on being in the moment and adrenaline and possibly adult beverages. I can't speak for everybody, but it's, it was one of those moments that definitely was crazy, but I wouldn't say it didn't cross the line, but it definitely came to right to the edge of the line and kind of stood on it, just kind of stood on it on its toes. I would think that, obviously the crucifixion thing in ECW, that definitely crossed a line. The one thing that I can think of in ECW, there's obviously one thing that you have to talk about in ECW, and that would be the debut of Brian Pillman. Brian Pillman, by this point, had definitely changed from, the clean-cut Lion Brian Pillman that we knew from WCW, even though he had turned heel there as well. But, he left and left his sanity behind. And, the whole thing in ECW where he was threatening to piss on people, threatening to stab people. And, of course, then that brings in the Brian Pillman that showed up in the WWF. And you had the whole thing that definitely crossed a line, and we'll get to that in a minute. The one thing that I remember in ECW that I was just like, holy shit, was the whole incident that occurred with between Shane Douglas and Pitbull 1, who had a broken neck and had a halo, and Douglas had grabbed Pitbull 1 by the neck and by the halo, and was like kind of shaking him back and forth. And the second that happened, you could hear it in the crowd. And the ECW crowd were people that, screamed and yelled and cheered for all kinds of crazy things and, yelled for blood and show your tits and said this, that, and the other thing about people. And they could get pretty creative and pretty bananas with their chants and stuff like that, which is definitely a good thing. But you could tell the second Douglas put his hands on Pitbull 1 that the whole mood of the crowd just, it went from 0 to ugly in like warp factor 9. It was completely nuts. A fan jumped on Douglas and started hitting him, and Douglas started hitting him back. I never have found out if that was planned or not. That was a definite example of complete and utter nuclear heat. Which is something that Shane Douglas in ECW excelled at doing. He excelled at stirring people up. But when I saw footage of that, when I saw that night, I was definitely like, how they got him out of that building that night, I will never know. Because I'm surprised there weren't people waiting for him outside to kick the living shit out of him. But, you know, it was definitely an ECW moment for sure. But it was one of those moments that I was definitely like, oh, wow, dudes, and you can almost see it on Douglas. You can almost see it in Douglas's body language, like, oh, fuck, this went bad. You know, this went south real quick, and these people are very pissed off. So that's, a line crossing moment. WWF, whatever, they've had a ton of them. And the thing is, there is a difference. Now, a lot of people say, well, this was crossing the line and that was crossing the line and so forth and so on. There's a difference, in my opinion, for what it's worth. There's a difference between crossing the line and in bad taste. There is a difference there. You can have something that's in bad taste, but it doesn't necessarily have to be something that's so bad that it's crossed over into, I am not watching this segment and I don't ever want to talk about it or bring it up again. That kind of a deal. There are things that are in bad taste, but they're not crossing a line. The whole fake wedding things that they've done over the years, in WWE, that's bad taste. I think a lot of the whole evil foreigner gimmicks, I think that's in bad taste. There have been times when that's slid into crossing the line, only if nothing else but through incredibly bad timing on real life issues, i.e. the whole thing with The Undertaker and Muhammad Hassan happening, the same day, unfortunately, as the attacks in London at that time. I think that my own personal opinion is that the whole evil foreign heel thing has really kind of run its course. I'm just kind of like, if somebody's going to be a heel and they happen to be from another country, okay, fine. But don't make the whole fact that they're from another country the only reason that they're a heel. If you get what I mean? I mean, that's just my opinion for what it's worth. I really like to think we're beyond that, but apparently Vince McMahon doesn't feel that way, so there's that. Obviously, the whole crossing the line moment that was just one of those, what? When it comes to the WWF back then, was the whole Brian Pillman, Vishnets that they ran that evening. Brian Pillman, the late great Brian Pillman, was in a feud with Steve Austin, and they were running these vignettes all night long that Austin was going to show up at Pillman's home because Pillman had been injured, and they showed Pillman at home with his wife and all this stuff like that, and he's talking about how he's ready for Austin, and then he pulls out a gun. And that was a moment that I was like, what? It was one thing to have the guy talking about, I'm ready for him and all this stuff like that. I mean, I figured that meant he's going to have police outside or he's going to have somebody waiting for Austin or something like that. When Pillman showed a gun, that's when it was like, okay, there's that line and boing, we've just jumped over it. And of course, it went on through the rest of the show. Austin showed up, broke into Pillman's home, and the last thing we saw of that segment was Pillman pointing this gun at Austin with this completely crazed, maniacal look on his face. And honest to goodness, I don't know how Brian Pillman did not become a successful actor, because if he had actually decided to be an actor instead of being a wrestler, he would have been amazing. He would have been they would have been beating down his door to try and get him playing, psychos and hitmen and all this stuff like that. He would have been awesome. And the screen went black. It was one of those, what? It was completely over the top, and I did think it was over the line, because this was supposed to be wrestling. It was supposed to be, good guys versus bad guys kind of a thing. Now, obviously, at this point in time, that's when wrestling had already started to change. And it wasn't us, the good guys, versus them, the bad guys, anymore. Now we have people, it's kind of like it was, us, you had the bad guys versus the worst guys, it was like that. And you had some good guys sprinkled in, in between and stuff like that. But I do think that whole thing definitely crossed a line. I thought it was completely like, okay, I know we're trying to tell a story and I know we're trying to create drama, but there's friggin' guns involved now. So let's, it was just completely like, all right, this time out, this has completely gone insane. Another moment that I felt was a complete line crosser, unfortunately, also has to do with Brian Pillman, which was the fact that it was announced on the WWF pay-per-view Bad Blood that Vince McMahon came on and announced that Brian Pillman had passed away, which obviously was a very awful thing and definitely a loss and something that we still feel. I know I still feel as a wrestling fan because I was a big fan of Brian's work. I thought he was incredible. And, his loss was just devastating. The thing that I kind of felt like, okay, this is making me wicked uncomfortable was the whole interview that was the next night between Vince McMahon and Brian's widow, Melanie. And it just felt so wrong, man. It was one of these, I have to be honest, I felt ashamed to be a wrestling fan at that moment, watching this interview and listening to McMahon ask all these, how are you going to support your children, all these questions like that. I'm like, this woman has just lost her husband. What the fuck is wrong with you? It just felt... It just felt wrong. It felt exploitive. It felt sleazy. It just felt... I felt awful. I felt awful for her, and it was definitely another moment that I was like, wow, this is crossing into very uncomfortable territory. And during the Attitude Era, they might have well just called the Attitude Era might have just been called, crossing the line every fucking week. Between the swearing, the sexual stuff, which personally I was like, it's a person's breasts or whatever. They're just their breasts. I don't really understand why people lose their minds about them, and, the violence and stuff like that. The violence I did have a problem with because I was like, well, that's what we're all here for, isn't it? I mean, if we're being honest with ourselves. But it was also just the fact that sometimes some of the storylines were just so stupid. And they were done to shock people. They were done to shock and offend, I suppose. Because there's a difference between something that's shocking and something that's shocking and offensive. And I don't know about anybody else, and I would never try to speak for any other fan, but I would rather have something be like, than be like, ew. I mean, shocking was having Kane being interviewed by Jim Ross and then Kane just wigging out and setting Jim Ross on fire. I mean, that was like, what the hell? Holy crap. It was one of those completely batshit insane moments. Then you have something like the whole Katie Vick thing. That was one of the most... we're not even in the same room with the line, so we've crossed it and left the room. The whole Katie Vick thing wasn't shocking. It was vulgar. It wasn't funny. Apparently to anybody but Triple H and whoever wrote it. It was another one of those moments where you're just sitting there as a wrestling fan going, this is why I don't tell people I'm a wrestling fan. Or if I do tell them I'm a wrestling fan, I just mention ECW in Japan and don't ever talk about this stuff. I mean, that was just completely... if you ask a wrestling fan what was one of the moments that you felt ashamed of being a wrestling fan, I would say maybe 7 out of 10 would at least probably bring up the Katie Vick whole vignette disgusting thing. It was just horrible. But like I said, I mean, everybody has their own opinion of what's, too much, and that's, fine. But I do think obviously some things go a little too damn far, because more than once the WWE has faced boycotts from this group, that group, the other group. Sometimes there are people that are you have people that actually were threatening to boycott them because they said their idea of sexual stuff was somebody grabbing somebody by the elbow. I'm like, I don't know where you got taught sex ed, or if you got taught sex ed. I'm pretty sure the elbow is not an erogenous zone. Just saying. But, I mean, I could understand if you're a parent. And at the time, I wouldn't say the WWF back then. I should just say WWE all the time now. Just you guys know what I'm talking about. Back then, I wouldn't say the WWFE. I'm doing this myself. Sorry. They had definitely stopped being like the cartoony kind of thing that it was in the late 80s. Mid to late 80s, when it was all, say your prayers and train and eat your vitamins and blah, blah, and all that. But people still brought small kids to the shows. People still bring small kids to the shows. And I know that if I was a parent of a kid that was under 10, I would have been really oh man, when they had Sable out there with a pair of hands covering over her breasts, That would be one conversation I would not want to have with my children. But, it's, for the most part, most wrestling fans are adults. And if a little kid sees something a little bit risque every once in a while, that's obviously not a good thing, because, you want kids to still be kids. And I do think sometimes the WWE went a little bit crazy when it came to showing women in, various stages of undress and stuff like that. But to be perfectly honest, I didn't have as big a problem with that as there was this one incident when Vince was doing the whole evil Mr. McMahon thing and was on TV all the time, where he made Trish Stratus get on her hands and knees and bark like a dog. And that bothered me. That I was like, okay, I am officially fucking offended. Because it's, the whole showing a woman's body, that I didn't really have a problem with, because I'm like, it's their body. They're beautiful women. If they want to, if they don't mind doing it, then who am I to be like, oh, shame on you. But the whole thing of humiliating Trish like that, I mean, that sends a really awful message. And that's one thing, but that is one thing that I do have to give Vince credit for. That when we saw Vince in the whole Mr. McMahon character doing all this heinous shit, he would get his own back. Somebody would kick the crap out of him, usually Steve Austin. And it was glorious. It was fantastic watching this guy beat up his boss. We saw Vince get humiliated a million times and beaten up and bloodied and stuff like that. And that felt great. I mean, we did the same thing happened in WCW with Eric Bischoff when he was with the NWO. We saw him get his ass handed to him more than once, and oh, that felt good. I have to admit, I really enjoyed watching him get beat up. Cause he was just such a fucking smarmy little shit. Hey Eric. But, I think that's something that's why a lot of people, and I know a lot of people have mentioned this, online anyway, that a lot of people have a problem with Stephanie McMahon, on camera as a the bad evil boss that she's been playing lately, is that she emasculates the men that work for her, and she's rude to the women and stuff like that, and hits people and all this stuff like that, and very rarely gets a physical comeuppance anymore, because we're in an era now where the WWE has public, they have stockholders and such to answer to. So you can't have a woman taking a 3D through a table anymore, like the Dudleys were doing back in the day, pretty much to any woman that got in their face. So, you can't have Stephanie they did have Stephanie take a spear from Roman Reigns, I believe it was last year or earlier this year, but it was done like, it was an accident. He didn't mean to do that. And I gotta be honest, I was totally fine with it. I went off to my happy place for a little while, and I watched, and if I watched it 10 or 12 times afterwards and laughed every time I saw it, then that's on me. But they won't do stuff like that anymore, where they won't have somebody get a physical revenge on her. And I think that sucks. And I think the fans think it sucks. And I think that's why some people just turn the fucking TV off when she comes on anymore. I know I do. I'm like, oh man, she's coming down to the ring. Oh man, she's got a mic. Oh, there goes the mute button. So, I'd like to know what you think crossed the line. Were there moments that made you as a wrestling fan go, that's it, take a sabbatical, turning the show off for the rest of the night, even if you came back the next week? Did you have you had moments where you were just like, okay, that's it, I'm done. They finally pushed my buttons too damn far, I'm done. Obviously at some point you came back. But like I said, I'd like to know. PlatinumRoselle@yahoo.com. I'm going to be talking more about this subject next week. I figured I would give it its own segment next week, talking about a moment in time when wrestling really crossed a very big line. It's one of the most infamous moments in professional wrestling. From ECW, the mass transit incident, told from the person who was there, and that would be me. So, you'll have to wait till next week for that. For the rest of this week's show, though, I would like to talk about the Raw and Smackdown that were held this week and go over the results with you guys. Raw this past Monday came from Houston, Texas, and we open up the show with Elias in the ring waiting to sing and play the guitar because we can't have nice things. And he's talking about how he hit Seth Rollins from behind and starts, pissing all over the local sports teams because that seems safe to do in Texas. I'm not saying people in Texas are violent. I'm just saying people in Texas are passionate about sports to the point of being slightly scary. And that's coming from somebody from Massachusetts. And trust me, I know from scary sports fans. All of this blah blah finally brings out Seth Rollins, the Intercontinental Champion. And Elias dares Rollins to get into the ring, but instead, Seth just kind of ambled on down, walking around the ring and stuff like that. And he finally gets in the ring and winds up being attacked by Jinder Mahal. Okay. See, again, we can't have nice things. He winds up getting beaten on by Elias and Jinder, who are now buddies, I guess, or whatever. I don't know. And Seth gets his butt saved by Roman Reigns. Yay! Which of course starts this big brawl between the four of them, which brings out Kurt Angle and says there's going to be a tag team match between the four of them right now. After a commercial break, it's pointed out that the announcing team has somebody different at it in the fact that David Otunga is on the mic instead of Jonathan Coachman. I thought it sucked less. Sorry, that was mean. It's Coachman just bothers me. I know that's his job sometimes to be annoying, but there's a limit. There's only so much annoying you can take. And so we have the first match of the evening, which is Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins versus Jinder Mahal and Elias. And Rollins winds up being the one that gets pinned by Elias, who cheated in order to get the pin on Seth. So the winners of the match are Jinder Mahal and Elias. We have, after showing Bruce Pritchard out in the audience and plugging his show, which is on the WWE Network, we have Kurt Hawkins in the ring. And he is talking about the fact that he's lost 99 matches in a row. And okay, I don't really know why you'd want to bring that up, but good for you. And he's saying he's not going to win, he's not going to lose the next match, which would make it 200. He also says that when he wins his match, everybody at ringside, I'm assuming, is going to get a free taco. And there was a table with tacos on the ringside area. I couldn't tell if they were actual, proper tacos or like, fast food tacos. Not that those aren't tasty, because they are, but I figured, people in Texas are discerning about that kind of thing. So I was like, well, if they are real tacos, I hope they're good. Hawkins introduced the person that he was going to be facing that evening, a person named James Harden, who is from Houston. So we have this match between Kurt Hawkins and James Harden, where you have the audience probably going, who cares, tacos? The thing is, Hawkins was going to go for a finisher, and then Baron Corbin's music starts playing, and I'm going, what? And out comes Baron Corbin. He gets on the apron, gets in the ring, and then when kind of like didn't threaten anybody, but he was just standing there being all like, I'm Baron Corbin, I'm all like a big tough guy, and Hawkins kind of was like, okay, and sort of kind of hit the reverse. Then Baron Corbin grabbed a hold of James Harden and used the end of days on him. And because of the fact that he beat up the guy's opponent, James Harden won the match because Kurt Hawkins was disqualified. And, Baron Corbin's got this kind of big grin on his face, like, I just did that just to show that I'm a big tough dick. Hawkins, that means that Kurt Hawkins has now lost 200 matches in a row, and Hawkins was rightly irritated, and in the physical altercation which occurred, he was driven by Baron Corbin into the table that had the tacos on it, and then Corbin grabbed the table, flipped it over on top of Hawkins, and all of the food went flying all over the place, and I can hear my mom's voice in my head going, people starving in China, and these people are throwing food around. It's just, it's Yankee thrift. What can I tell you? We get a package in the backs of Ronda Rousey working out with, getting Natalya warmed up for her match, which is coming up between herself and Nia Jax. Also in the back, Kurt Angle is definitely kind of, what the fuck? He's completely like, I don't know what the hell just happened, and asks Baron Corbin, what the fuck did you do that for? And Corbin says he'll explain it later on. And he says that he feels like he's being overlooked. I'm like, how can you be overlooked? You're like 6'4". Trust me, dude, nobody's overlooking you. And he went to Stephanie and complained to her, so he went off and whined like a bitch, apparently. She sent a letter for Kurt, and Corbin delivered it because he's a suck-up. And the letter apparently says that he is a constable on Raw now and is going to keep Kurt from making judgments that aren't fair to everybody. What? I'm sorry, what? Isn't constable like an old-timey way to say police officer? Am I missing something? Did I miss a memo? What? And I'm seriously like, okay, that sucked. That was stupid. Doesn't make me care about Baron Corbin any more or any less. And why didn't Kurt Angle just punch him in the face? You know, other than the fact that, like, again, see, we can't have nice things. And I don't get what I want. So we had the next match is a ladies match with the champion on Raw, the female champion, Nia Jax, going against Natalya. The whole match is, you know, it's a really good match, and she is, Ronda Rousey came out and was doing commentary as well, and they, you know, she was just saying all this stuff about how, she made a couple of comments that I was like, okay, that's, including something between her and her husband talking about ripe for the picking, and I was like, I don't need to think about this. If it's all the same to you, thank you very much. After a commercial, we come back to Nia having the advantage over Natalya. When the match continued, a lot of back and forth and stuff like that. Natalya had a rebound off of the ring ropes, you know, did the whole bounce off the ropes, but didn't finish it because she all of a sudden kind of moved and her knee moved wrong, and she came to a sudden stop. She was grabbed by Nia. Nia hit her with a Samoan drop, and that was all she wrote. And so we still have Nia Jax as the women's champion. Once the match was over, and the camera stayed on it, so we knew something was going on, Natalya's still holding on to her injured knee, and then she starts to unzip her boot. Nia's standing there like she's looking, you know, concerned. Rhonda came down to ringside to check on her friend, and this obviously led to some aggressiveness between Rhonda and Nia. We had some pushing, we had a little, you know, yelling back and forth, and that kind of, you know, you can't call it testosterone because there's women involved, but there was definitely feelings of severe hostility. Nobody was going to be going out for Cosmos after this. Rhonda and the referee got Natalya out of the ring and had her going up the aisle, holding on to her to keep her, you know, standing. Natalya was limping as she went up, you know, walked up the ring. The announcement came that Bobby Lashley was going to be responding to what happened with Sami Zayn 2 weeks ago. I'm kind of like, why? You know, he came out and pretty much crushed Sami's hand into powder last week. Wasn't that a response? I mean, he can do that again if he wants to. I mean, made me laugh the first time, but that, you know, but then again, I'm kind of sick that way. There's a backstage interview with Renee Young talking with Bobby Roode, talking about his upcoming match and the fact that his match is with Braun Strowman. And he says that he's, you know, he respects Braun and he's obviously impressed by him, but he's still going to beat him. And, yeah, that didn't happen. Come on, really. One power slam later and Braun Strowman's your winner. We have an interview with, Charlie Caruso talking with Kevin Owens, asking his opinion of the match that just happened. And Owens talking about how he doesn't care about anybody but himself. And talking about the whole thing about everybody being crazy for Finn Balor. Basically, you know, mocking the whole Balor Club thing and the Too Sweet thing and why people are so interested in Finn Balor and, you know, so on and so forth. And I'm basically like, because he's exciting and charismatic and a handsome dude and has a sexy accent and isn't you. Ta-da! In the back, we see Natalya with some ice on her knee as she's telling Rhonda what happened, that she felt her knee, you know, pop. Obviously, that's not a good thing. Nia came in and said that she was sorry that it happened, that she didn't intend to hurt Natalia's knee. She asks Natalia if she's going to be able to be in a match at Money in the Bank. And Rhonda is, pissed and is basically telling Nia to look at what she did. And Nia is basically like, the fuck, it wasn't my fault. She was going off the ropes. And, makes a remark to Rhonda saying that this isn't ballet. No shit. You know what the thing is? The dumb thing is, those girls that do ballet and stuff, they probably work as hard as wrestlers do. They probably work harder. Trust me. I mean, if Black Swan's in any indication, I wouldn't. Those girls go through hell. Rhonda told Nia to get out, and it went back and forth from there, with Natalia finally telling them to quit it, and that she just was like, I'm done with the both of you, and left. And Nia and Rhonda were both kind of just looking after, like watching her leave, both of them looking concerned, I guess. I don't really, we have an in-ring interview with Renee Young talking with Matt Hardy and Bray Wyatt, who are now called the Deleter of Worlds, is the name of the team, because it's the whole putting together the whole thing with the... I still don't get this. I don't get it. It's interesting to watch in a car crash kind of a way, but I don't get it. And we get the overwhelming weirdness that is this team. It's just, I don't get it. I don't get it. And with the whole thing with Wyatt talking about whoever wins the tag team battle royal coming up is going to be deleted, that just sounded wrong. I'm sorry, that's just, wow. In case you hadn't heard, there's a pay-per-view this month, like every month. And the announcers talked about the card for Money in the Bank, which is going to be held on June 17th. We had said Battle Royal next, which is for the Tag Team Championship match that will be at Money in the Bank. So we have the team of the Ascension and Breezango, the B team, Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. Could we please come up with a name for this team? Just something, double D's, I don't care. Heath Slater and Rhino, who also need a name. The Revival and Titus Worldwide, all in this Battle Royal. So, the winners of said wind up being the B team. What? I mean, I really feel terrible about saying it like that. I'm sorry. Because I like both of these guys. I like Bo Dallas, and I like Curtis Axel. I do. I think they're both fantastic wrestlers. I think that they're really good on the microphone, but the whole B team thing, I don't know why I don't like it. I almost kind of wish they had called them the other guys or something like that. I don't know. I just don't know why I don't like the whole B team thing. I couldn't even tell you why it bothers me. It just bothers me for some reason. Following the next segment that we had in the ring was Bobby Lashley coming out to talk about what happened with Sami Zayn, like we said 2 weeks prior. He wants Sami to come out to the ring and say the things that he's been saying behind his back to his face. Sami Zayn, as it turns out, is in the crowd, who unfortunately didn't crowd surf him to the ring so Bobby Lashley could just break his spine and be done with it. He says he won't come into the ring because the last time that they were, facing each other in the ring, Lashley almost broke his hand. Almost. Try harder next time, Bobby. And he can't, he's completely injured and can't hold on to the microphone without pain and can't cook properly, and wondering if there's something else you can't do with your hand properly. Like comb your hair. What? What did you think I was going to say? Actually, never mind. It continues on with Sammy slamming on the fact that he allegedly posed a quote to Bobby Lashley and was sent a DM thanking him and getting a response to join Bobby Lashley's fan club. And it was just, this whole thing was painful. I'm not saying Sami Zayn doesn't do great work on the mic, because he does, because he has to, because it must be the fact that he does really good work, because I want to smack the shit out of him, or more specifically, I want to see Bobby Lashley smack the shit out of him. So obviously, Sammy knows, very well how to be a heel, and not have to, rely on the whole, tropes of being the whole evil foreigner thing. The only way that this could get any worse was Sammy starts with wondering if Bobby really has sisters. What? And whether or not he was in the army. Okay, that was apparently the bear that didn't need to be poked, because up till this point, Bobby Lashley's been all smiles, and that was the second where it was like, oh fuck, you just pissed off the big scary man. That's not really fucking smart. The crowd starts yelling USA because Texas. No offense. Don't be mad. I love America too. I do. I'm proud to be an American citizen, so just fooling around. I was kind of like, okay, I don't get the USA thing. I mean, I don't get it right now. I mean, I don't get why you did it right now, besides the fact that you could have just gone with a you suck chant or shut the fuck up, or, well, actually, I'd love to see a WWE crowd try and get a shut the fuck up chant on live TV. That would be awesome. That would be the coolest thing ever, and I would just laugh like a mad woman. An interview in the back with Charlie Caruso, who apparently drew the short straw because she has to interview Jinder Mahal, who has Sunil Singh with him, because of course he does. Jinder proceeds to talk a lot of smack about Roman Reigns, and as this is going on, Renee Young, who is in another part of the arena, is asking Roman what his opinion of Jinder and his remarks are, and that goes about as well as you think it was going to. It runs into a complete clusterfuck backstage, where we wind up having Roman stalking Jinder, and it turns into a big, huge fight in the back. I liked the whole kind of dueling interview thing they had going. I like that. And I like the fact that Roman wasn't all like the usual, we'll settle it in the ring kind of crap. He's like, fuck that shit. I'm going to kick his ass right now. I just like that. I was like, that's direct. I like that. And the fact that pissed off Roman Reigns equals hot Roman Reigns. Yes, I'm shallow. I'm a woman. I have needs. Don't judge me. Following that, we had a match with Sasha Banks and Alexa Bliss and Ember Moon versus the Riot Squad. The match ended with Sasha, Bayley, and I'm sorry. What did I say? I'm sorry. I'm looking at two different things. The match started, and Alexa says that she got hurt, and she said that she was leaving the match, and when we had a commercial, we came back from the commercial, Alexa was not in the match anymore, and we had Bayley come in during the match. She winds up tags herself into the match, and winds up using her signature move on Sarah Logan and gets the pin. So Sasha, Bayley, and Ember are announced as the winners of the match. And in the back, Baron Corbin starts bitching and asking Kurt Angle if he was going to let this happen. And Corbin's whole thing is that he felt like that the people that were in the match didn't stay in the match, and he wanted them to have the match start up again, or he was going to call Stephanie and let her know what Kurt was doing. And Angle had to go out and have the match started again, and that they couldn't, the decision wasn't going to be allowed to hold. So we have the commercial. We come back from commercial, and we had Sasha and Bayley and Ember celebrating their win, and Ember's trying to play peacemaker between Sasha and Bayley, which is okay. Not that that's, I kind of find that funny and ironic, because Ember Moon, who is an amazing wrestler and has the coolest look ever, even, she looks like she's like Halloween 24/7, and she's all like, hey, you guys gotta be friends and hug it out. Okay, well that's all right. Well, and she's basically telling them, end your crap and stop, being pissed at each other, so they can go celebrate the fact that they've won their match. And they're about to do that, and then along comes Kurt Angle, who tells them that because Bayley ran in and got involved in the match, that was a disqualification, and they don't get to keep their win. And that got Sasha all pissed, and got her all pissed at Bayley, and she stormed off, and that situation obviously hasn't been resolved in the slightest. I'm kind of like, okay, so it's obvious that we're going for the whole Stephanie's being a bitch and having her bitch, because apparently now, Baron Corbin is her bitch, doing her bidding from, afar. Yippee. I'm kind of like, okay, so their partner fucking walked out on them and somebody else got involved, so it wouldn't be uneven, although I'm pretty sure you would have been totally fine with the faces being down one person short, right, Baron? I'm sorry, did I say bitch? I meant biatch. I'm sorry. I forget sometimes. And then they decide to show Baron Corbin giving the referee from the ladies' match flack. To which I'd be like, I'm sorry, I think the referee should be like, I quit and I'm suing for an unsafe work environment. We have a segment with the Big Show, and his, he's out on the stage with some of the members of the Special Olympics team, who are, in Texas. And they were promoting the 2018 Special Olympics Games, which is obviously very cool. And Finn Balor comes out for his match, and all of the athletes did his pose along with him. And that was awesome. That's just another example of Finn Balor just being cool as fuck. They did the whole thing, with the LGBTQ community, and that was awesome. And he just seems like a really decent guy, like just one of these people that you could just hang out with and have fun. I just think he's awesome. I really do. He seems like a genuinely good dude. Which brings us to the main event of the evening, Finn Balor versus Kevin Owens. And I rank on Kevin Owens because he's the heel. I'm not supposed to like him. And I'm sure Kevin Owens in real life, quote, quote, is a really great guy. From what I've heard, he's actually a really great guy. So it really feels weird to be so vicious and dump so much vitriol on him when I've heard in real life he's a nice guy. But that's his job, for us to hate him. So, so we have a lot of back and forth during this match. And it winds up actually ending in a disqualification because Owens had Finn on the ground and kept stomping on him, and the referee, after counting to 5 and Owens continuing to kick him, hit him with his, and continued basically to be a dick, DQ'd Kevin Owens. And the way they moved the storyline along was that because Baron Corbin gave all that crap to that one referee, the other referees are like, well, fine, we're not going to be, we're not going to let people be, stretchy about the rules anymore. We're not going to be, we're not going to have any give anybody any leniency on that kind of stuff. The beating continues even though the match is over, with Owens still beating on Finn, and it winds up with Owens getting a ladder and taking it into the ring and setting up the ladder and acting like he was going for the briefcase, but winds up deciding to beat on Finn some more. Finn rallies, does a drop kick, sends Owens into the turnbuckles. Finn goes up the ladder, comes off the ladder with a coup de grace onto Kevin. Finn climbed to the top of the ladder, took the briefcase down, and basically was, making the very pronounced statement that he intends to be the winner of the Money in the Bank match. So that was the end of Raw. Great ending, because anything with Finn Balor on top is good as far as I'm concerned, and that probably came out wrong, but I can't help where my mind goes. I often have no idea where my mind goes. I wish it would leave a forwarding address every once in a while. Which brings us to last evening, which was WWE SmackDown in beautiful Corpus Christi, Texas. I can say that because I have family there. We begin the show with the SmackDown Women's Champion Carmella coming out to the ring because, say it with me all together, we can't have nice things. She is saying that, the fans need to respect her and praise her, and the fans are basically like, fuck you, you Jersey Shore reject. And then she proceeds to run down Asuka, which seems like a very good way to get yourself hurt badly. She has a video package run about Asuka and says that Asuka at one point was as great as everyone thinks she is, but doesn't seem to think she is any longer. Which brings up Asuka, which thankfully shuts up Carmella. Unfortunately, before Asuka can do anything along the lines of kick Carmella's ass, out come Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. And a lot of back and forth happens there. And Paige winds up coming out to the ring, and she's basically like, nobody's making matches here but me. So she says she's going to make a match, and that Asuka has unfinished business with everybody involved, but, specifically Mandy and Sonya. And so she gets to choose who she faces, and Asuka finally gets to say something, and she says she wants to face both of them. So we get a match between Asuka going against Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose, which ends with Asuka putting Sonya in the Asuka lock and Sonya tapping out, to the surprise of absolutely nobody. After the match is done, Carmella shows what kind of a champion she is by trying to get in a cheap shot or two at Asuka. Mandy goes to try and attack Asuka because, yeah, really, just why? Why would you do that? She just made your partner tap out and you're going to piss her off even worse? You're cute. Asuka hits her with a spinning back fist, and Carmella, showing again what kind of a gutless tramp she is, hits Asuka from behind and then stands over and then hits her with a thrust kick and stands over her like she's actually accomplished something other than pissing Asuka off worse. In the back, we have Miz doing these, I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I think it's some sort of karate move kind of thing, I'm guessing. I'm not sure. I'm kind of like, so we're like, are we trying to be Neo or something? Are we swatting at bugs? What are we doing? And he nearly hits a gentleman carrying a tray of pancakes, because that's something that happens a lot. the New Day show up and they apologize to Miz. They say they've been, being silly and playing games and stuff like that. And they're now going to be serious about who is going to be going into the Money in the Bank match. And that they're gonna say who is going to be the person going in the match from their team. Miz obviously thinks there's a catch involved because there is. They say that Miz is going to be the person who they're going to let choose who's going to be in the Money in the Bank match. They respect Miz for making them realize that they were being too foolish, and they want to make amends by having Miz play a part in this, which smells like a lot of unrefrigerated fish. Miz pulls down his little Naruto band that he wears. I don't know what you'd call that thing. Although I'm like, you can totally see under that. We do see that you can see under that, right? So they have a hat that they have the names written in paper, and they're like, we want you to reach into this hat and pull out the name, and that's who's going to be in the match. Miz says, okay, pulls down his little, headband thing. While it's down and he can't see, Dr. Evil quotes, New Day switches the hats, and instead of a top hat with pieces of paper in it, there's now, Big E is holding a top hat that has a bunch of, stuff. I'm kind of looking at it and I'm like, is that oatmeal? No, it's not oatmeal. It's not lumpy enough to be oatmeal. Oh, it's pancake batter, of course, because pancakes, because why? Miz, needless to say, doesn't realize this and sticks his hand in a hat full of pancake batter. So you've ruined a hat for a joke. Not only that, you've ruined pancake batter for a joke. You could have made a whole bunch of chocolate chip pancakes with that. The New Day, needless to say, crack up. The audience, needless to say, cracks up. Miz, needless to say, has a complete bitch fit. Although I gotta be honest with you, I wouldn't want to put my hand in there either. And he says that they're not gonna find it funny when, Samoa Joe and Rusev kick the crap out of them along with him, because they're going to be facing the three of them in a match that evening. After commercial, we have Luke Harper with Eric Rowan in his corner going against Carl Anderson with Luke Gallows in his corner. And the match winds up being won, thank you God, by Carl Anderson, who gets the 3 count. And with a quick roll up after a missed thrust kick. And it's definitely one of those thank you God moments, definitely. We get a clip from the week previous of the whole dance off between Lana and Naomi, which ended in a complete fracas, between the respective ladies and their respective, men and tag team partners and such. Which leads to a small promo between, with Jimmy Uso and Naomi talking about what they're going to do that evening, and we know that it's not going to be attractive. So that brings the next match up, which is Lana and Aiden English. I don't know, well, now we know why it's not Rusev, because he's in the main event. And they are going against Jimmy Uso and Naomi. Naomi winds up winning the match with a crossbody followed by a super kick. So the winners of the match, Jimmy Uso and Naomi. No surprise there. The next thing that happens after that is a contract signing of a rather more intimate nature than normal. Usually when they have the whole contract signing thing, it's done out in the ring, out in the arena, and everybody can see it. This time it's going to be in with Paige. And Paige has Shinsuke Nakamura and AJ Styles there to sign the contract for their upcoming match. She tells them, the rules for the last man standing match, because those are the steps that Nakamura picked out. And Paige says that she pretty much guarantees that there's going to be a winner in this match. AJ says that he would like to make a statement. And his statement is basically that he feels like this has been going on forever. I don't know what exactly he's talking about. Maybe the fact that it seems like Nakamura can't stop touching his junk. I don't know. He understands why Shinsuke does the things that he does, that the whole, the low blows and the steps that he can, the last man standing match stipulations of basically you can do stuff short of dropping a piano on somebody, that it's because Nakamura knows in his heart that he can't beat AJ. AJ says he's going to be leaving Money in the Bank the same way that he walks into Money in the Bank with the WWE Championship still in his grasp. AJ puts his name on the contract, and then it's Nakamura's turn, and Nakamura says that the pen is out of ink. Huh? Nakamura asks AJ if he can use his pen. Nakamura takes the pen and says the pen is broken. I could make a whole bunch of jokes right there, but I'm not going to because I'm a lady like that. AJ loses his temper and yells at Nakamura and says that, it's time to quit fucking around. Well, he doesn't use the word fucking around because AJ doesn't swear. And, that it's time for, the games have to quit and they need to just get this done. AJ then slaps Nakamura in the face and storms out. Nakamura takes a pen out and puts his name on the contract. Now you have to wonder about Nakamura's strategy here. Obviously the strategy is get AJ so mad that he'll be sloppy in the match. That's one way to look at the strategy. The other way to look at the strategy is get AJ so mad that he, basically dismembers you in the ring. Because we all know that AJ Styles, when he wants to, can fight exceedingly dirty. I personally cannot wait for this match. I'm waiting for that match more than anything else in the Money in the Bank pay-per-view is AJ against Nakamura. Please, God, please don't let it end in another disqualification because of people getting punched in the nuts. Please, God, please. That's the whole purpose of the last man standing thing. Following that up, we have the ladies match, another ladies match, which is Becky Lynch going against Charlotte Flair. The match ended in a way that I was kind of like, okay, I was happy, but I was also kind of like, wow, I didn't really think that was gonna, okay. The match ended with Charlotte tapping out because Becky had her locked in the disarm her. So the winner by submission, Becky Lynch. Now, obviously, I don't mean to say that in a way that makes it sound like I'm slagging on Becky Lynch, because I'm not. Because I think she is an amazing athlete. I also think Charlotte Flair is an amazing athlete. And I guess in kind of the people who won that match for the most part are the fans, because we got to see an amazing match like that for free. That's fucking awesome. We have Samoa Joe being interviewed by Dasha, and him doing his usual whole, I'm Samoa Joe, and I'm a big tough guy, and I'm, this vicious competitor, and blah, blah, so forth, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of like, okay, the whole, you're a big tough guy and all that stuff like that. Fine. Okay. After commercial, we come back and are told that we're going to have a summit next week with the women that are in the Money in the Bank match, who are the women from SmackDown. A summit. What? I'm sorry. The last time I looked, this was wrestling, not CNN. I'm sorry. We're not allowed to call it wrestling anymore. It's sports entertainment, right? Okay. Big Cass comes out to the ring and has an interview with Renee, where he's basically talking about the fact that, Daniel Bryan is this little midget of a person and, can't beat a guy that's his size, and brings up the whole, that a good big man will always beat a good little man. What that has to do with Cass versus Daniel Bryan, I have absolutely no clue, but, to each his own, whatever. With Cass going on and on and on about how he's going to rip Daniel apart because Daniel is small and he's large. And it's just like, okay, fine, we get it. You're going to kick his ass, blah, blah. Does this need to go on this damn long? Sin Cara talks about what happened previously between him and Andrade Almas, and talks about the fact that he's known Almas since they were kids, and that something's changed between the two of them, which brings Zelina Vega out, and she wants to know, what Sin Cara's, what his deal is and what he's, talking about. She says that she's the best thing that ever happened to Almas, and that, you weren't helping him, you weren't doing anything for him, and all this stuff like that. And that she went and talked to Paige to get a match between the two of them next week. And Almas winds up attacking Sin Cara from behind, because heels can never come at somebody face on in the WWE, and tosses him into a storage case. And I really wish I could care about this. I'm sorry, I'm not. Other than the fact that every time I see Zelina Vega, I'm just like, ugh. Which is her job, I know that's her job, but it's kind of, there's a difference between boo you suck, we hate you, and boo you suck, we hate you, get off my TV. And she's just walking that tightrope. But I'm sure, give her time and I'll be more used to hating her, I guess. Which brings us to our main event of Kofi Kingston, Xavier Woods, and Big E going against The Miz, Samoa Joe, and Rusev, because The Miz, Rusev, and Samoa Joe. I'm sorry, why am I thinking of that old song from Sesame Street? One of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. I'm sorry, that wasn't nice. I'm sorry, that was really not nice. Because Miz is a great athlete. It's just, you look at the body types on Samoa Joe and Rusev, who are, built very powerfully and stocky and stuff like that. And Miz is just, has a different body type and stuff. So, not hating in a mean way, just the dichotomy of it struck me funny. This is what you think it's going to be when you have these 6 people involved. This is a hell of a match. It's just completely nuts, with everything going everywhere and just complete, lunacy. Ending up with, it ended up with just the whole thing with, Miz getting a hold of the tray of pancakes, and Rusev and Samoa Joe are holding on to Big E, who's the only member of the team that's not incapacitated at this time. And apparently Miz is going to, throw the pancakes at Big E and then bash him with a tray or something. I don't know. He winds up throwing them, and then it goes wrong, because he winds up throwing them, instead of hitting Big E with them, he winds up getting them all over Rusev and Samoa Joe. And they don't take it very well. I'm kind of like, dudes, why are you getting so mad? They're just pancakes. They're not pancakes with butter and syrup. I mean, then I'd be pissed, because you'd be covered in butter and syrup, and that's just gross. Rusev winds up hitting Miz with the matcha kick, and Joe hits him with the back senton, and they leave. Big E hits Miz with the midnight hour, and gets the 3 count. So the winner of the match is the New Day. Fun. It was fun. It was craziness and which is what you expect with the New Day. It's crazy and fun and you don't know what's going to happen. Once again, this week between SmackDown and Raw, I gotta give it to SmackDown again. I'm sorry, I really do. They gotta step it up on Raw. I seriously, really, I'm really not happy with the whole Corbin as a constable thing. I'm like, wow, we really have to go here and do this. Okay, but you guys know what you're doing, allegedly. So, that is my show for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, comments, queries, complaints, anything you'd like to send my way, you can send them to platinumroselle@yahoo.com, and I will definitely read them. I hope that you will be so inclined to check out the other shows that are part of our little happy island of misfit toys. I have another solo show. It is called Platinum Rose's Garden. It is my Supernatural podcast, where I talk about the CW show Supernatural, of which I am a big fan. We are done for the season, but you can go back and listen to my earlier shows if you'd like. If you want to have some episode recaps or some fanfic recommendations, you can definitely go check it out. And out to PlatinumRosesGarden.com. And you will hopefully check out the other shows that are part of our little family, as I mentioned, including Subject Cinema, which is TC and I's movie podcast that we've been doing for more than 10 years. Oh my gosh. And we have Front Row 5 and 10, which is our list show. We do, all these crazy lists, and there's a lot of fun, and I hope you'll check that out as well. TC has some solo shows that he does also. Catastrophe Vortex, which is his look at disaster movies. It's on hiatus, but you can go listen to earlier episodes. He's really, really, really knowledgeable about those, and it's a lot of fun. He also has 3 Minute Weekend and Tuesday Digidex, which are his movie shows where he talks about the movies that are coming out this coming week. Things at the theater, things on pay-per-view, on demand, all that stuff, so you know where to spend your money. And there is also Cavebabble, which is Eric and Valerie, our good buddies, and they have their own show, and they're really, really awesome people. There is Comic Grotto with Aunt Bee and Pee-wee, which is currently on hiatus, but you can check out earlier shows as well. I also hope, if you are so inclined to listen to something on the dramatic side, all of us got together and did a dramatic reading of something that TC wrote. It's really awesome. It's called Manhattan Hammerdown as It Happened. And it was released in conjunction with the 10-year anniversary of the film Cloverfield. It's looking at what happened in other parts of New York the night that something very large and very angry came out of New York Harbor and wreaked all kinds of havoc. It was a real labor of love, and it was a lot of fun to do. I hope you will definitely check it out. You can Google Manhattan Hammerdown, and you'll be able to find it that way. So, this is Kim Brown, also known as Platinum Rose Lady, signing off for another week here on Ring Around the Rosie. Hope you guys have a terrific rest of the week, and I'll see you back here next week.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.